Well, we're about to close the door of the 2022-2003 winter, meteorologically speaking, anyway, and begin spring 2023 in a matter of hours. Thanks for clicking on to the final winter edition of Vogan's European Outlook for the 28th of February. The day is Tuesday, of course, and it is pretty much done and dusted for another year. So, of course, it's recap time. What did you think about the 22-23 winter? How did you think it was in your general area? What did you think the forecast was like versus reality? In my opinion, anyway, the month of December scored pretty high. January lost a couple of marks, but they still scored a 7 out of 10. And it really was February that let me down big time. It was always going to be a slightly milder than average winter when combining December through February, the overall 90-day period. The reason why I thought that was the case was the warmer planet that we live in now, and some people may argue that point, some people will likely agree with that point. But generally speaking, with the water temperatures the way they have been in recent years as and the rise, and the way that the pattern has all the kind of evolved over the last decade or so, I did think that the likelihood would be that we would see a warmer than average winter overall. That being said, that there would be spells of cold, and the Pacific Ocean teleconnections would be the driver in the northern hemisphere winter of the winter that is just about to end. So Man-Julian oscillation would be critical, I think. It did end up becoming a major driver along with other aspects, and of course the southern stratospheric warming. It was always highlighted in the winter forecast that it would there would be a higher likely chance of seeing a major southern stratospheric warming this year. We've seen one in 2019. We didn't in 2020. We've seen one again in 2021, and there was no major southern stratospheric warming during the 2022 year. And of course, we have now seen the major southern stratospheric warming last week. So all in all, it has been pretty much an every other year occurrence of a major southern stratospheric warming. And it does look as if we are going to start to see those responses into the real life pattern as we go into the upcoming weekend and then the next week here. I was a little bit downhearted, a little bit deflated, if I'm being honest, that the models weren't really showing much in terms of cold, but it seemed to be that after I produced that video last night, actually the newer runs really started to show something quite different to what every so often I think you just become a little bit deflated. Sometimes you're putting a lot of things on the table, opening yourself up to criticism. People will jump on everything that you say and do. And at the end of the day, folks, I don't claim to be an expert in really anything. I'm a HGV driver by trade, by profession, and this is really all pretty much a bit of fun for me, producing these winter forecasts and summer forecasts and whatnot. This overall winter, I think, has been reasonably decent. I'm fairly happy with it, despite February not materialising. I did say that the Man-Julian oscillation getting stuck into those warm phases would deliver prolonged spells of mild conditions, and that has been the case. And then, of course, the major southern stratospheric warming, it's all about timing and making a call back at the very beginning of December, the beginning of winter, for something that was going to take place potentially a couple of months down the road. Yes, is a guessing game, but I did look at all the parameters on the table, and I made that call that I believed that the potential was higher for a major southern stratospheric warming. Man-Julian oscillation playing a big role as well, depending on what phase that was in. And basically, the February development of that major southern stratospheric warming was a lot later than I anticipated. I did think that it would be towards the end of January, very beginning of February, and we would see potentially the coldest spell of the entire winter during the month of February. It has happened that we've had a major sun stratospheric warming, but it was delayed by a couple of weeks, and therefore the time frame is knocked out. We are, of course, increasing solar energy incoming from the sun. A lot more now. We're gaining about 4 or 5 minutes per day in terms of daylight now. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't get snow, disruptive snow, and significant cold. And I do think I am still beating the drum that we should have a decent spell of cold, I think, during the month of March. How long, how severe, exactly where everything comes together for any kind of cold spell is still open to question, and the finer details is yet to be ironed out. But it certainly looks as if we are now beginning to see right in front of us the response from 10 millibars down into the stratosphere, down into the troposphere. Our good friend Gavin Partridge of Gav's Weather Vids, highly recommend watching his channel. Produces several videos per day, and he put this tweet out not that long ago saying that the zone of wind reversion uh, at 10 HPA occurred today for the first time this season. So there we're starting to see that downward propagation, that transfer from top down through the stratosphere, and with wind reversion now at the 30 HPA level, that is going to start responding to the troposphere and the 500 millibar pattern. And the models are now becoming quite well aligned that we are going to see some spell of cold and outbreaks of snow, primarily, I think, north and eastern portions of the UK, but not exclusively. And my biggest issue that I had both yesterday's video and in previous videos is this area of high pressure that has been remarkably dominant and strong. Where does this position itself into the weekend and into next week? That has been the big question, and my fear, I was starting to get a little bit nervous about the fact that that area of high pressure, in my opinion, was not shifting as much as I would like to see it. We essentially want to see it either head north, west, or northwest, and that will open the door to seeing some major cold coming in to the UK airspace. So, of course, we have got, this is the latest run of the ECMWF. This is the 500 millibar geopotential height anomalies, by the way. And this is the current setup. Very powerful area of high pressure centered to the north of the British Isles, as you can see here for today. And pressure here at the house at 1040 millibar. So a very impressive area of high pressure. Notice here as we start to play through the loop here, this is into the latter half of the week and into particularly the weekend. Watch what happens. Now we are seeing a bit of a trough and areas of low pressure exit North America. Some very cold conditions across the eastern half of the United States at the moment. That's now progressing into the western portion of the Atlantic. That's essentially helping this area of high pressure that's been so dominant over the northern half of the UK to push up towards Greenland here. Then we'll start to see the heights coming down over Europe. And of course, we want to see that area of high pressure shift, out of the way. And then we can open the door to a cold trough coming in from the north and the northeast here. So you can see here as we play through the loop, there we go. And you can see a classic shift in the upper air pattern, negative NAO signal, the Arctic oscillation going negative, and here, folks, is the response to that major southern stratospheric warming that took place. The golden question is how long does this last? How severe does it, be? And also, what is the chances in terms of snowfall? And we'll iron out those details hopefully in the next several days here. There's still plenty of time yet, as we're only on Tuesday, and the time frame that we're looking at, of course, is the weekend and into next week here. But you see here, this is the overview chart. The area of high pressure kind of just bubbles around in place over the northern half of the British Isles. Very little in the way of precipitation, but we do have, of course, with high pressure over the northern half of the UK. We've got those winds coming in from a northeasterly direction down the eastern side of the UK. So we are seeing a lot of cloud cover with that colder air crossing over the North Sea. There's moisture in the air, and that is creating quite the cloud deck across the majority of the British Isles at the moment here. Leaden skies, reasonably chilly conditions, and of course that chill is magnified, of course, when you've got that northeasterly airflow. But you notice here that as we go towards the weekend here, we start to see the changes taking place here. Notice here we've got a deep area of low pressure moving into the central portion of the Atlantic here. The push of that area of low pressure is going to start to help with the combination of this deepening area of low pressure over the north coast of Scandinavia here. Paying close attention to these two features here, the system over the Atlantic, the system on the north coast of Norway, as those systems kind of push towards each other essentially on a very large scale. So of course we've got this system here over the Atlantic pushing east. We've got this system trying to push down from a north to south direction. It's forcing this area of high pressure then to kind of get shifted over towards Greenland here, and you can see that takes place here. So you notice the movement here. There's that area of low pressure pushing east. There's that feature coming south down the west coast of Norway, and you see that area of high pressure then getting pushed towards the northwest direction here. And then eventually what happens is the door is open to a blast of northerly winds here. Notice the area of high pressure now centered over Greenland. And of course, you've got these areas of low pressure riding underneath. We need to pay attention to these because these systems are going to try to push towards the southwest of the UK and Ireland. At the same time, we've got Arctic air, polar air coming south, and this is going to be a pretty significant push of true Arctic air, and we haven't seen that for quite some time. It's a combination of the Mandralian oscillation and the response from stratosphere into the troposphere. Remember, the stratosphere expands, the troposphere contracts, so therefore you're forcing all that cold air from high up in the atmosphere to now get pushed into the troposphere, and this is the response at 500 millibars right the way down to the surface here. And this is certainly a very interesting pattern to speak about, that's for sure here. So certainly a very cool look early to mid next week on the mols here, and this is quite this becomes the bigger aspect here. Instead of it being an outlier, it looks as if it is becoming the more likely scenario as we go forward here. So an area of low pressure at 981 millibars over the North Sea here. We've got, of course, bitterly cold winds coming in on the western flank of that low. We've got an area of high pressure, of course, centered over Greenland. So you've got all the right ingredients in place. The question is, does this persist? And I do believe that based on everything that I've said already and based on everything that's taken place, I do believe that even if we do get a little bit of a pullback, we're going to get a return of colder conditions, periodically through the month of March. I think March will wind up colder than average, and even it wouldn't surprise me if April turns out to be quite chilly as well here. So yes, we're back in business once again when it comes to an interesting outlook seen by the mols here. Now we're starting to see, the response now of that sudden stratospheric warming, which I'm becoming a little bit more interested, a little bit more excited about. And in terms of snowfall, not a huge amount getting printed out just yet off the mols, but we'll watch this space. Certainly, when you look at snow charts and whatnot, you have to really take them with a pinch of salt. It depends on where the low is, the high is, how much cold air is involved in the overall pattern. Lots of things to keep it right here on my YouTube channel. I will have a March outlook published on markhoganweather.com in the next couple of days. Stay tuned. See you again, hopefully tomorrow.